Because if I make this some kind of organized, structured thing, it's going to come off as fake. You're going to miss things. You're not going to see the way that it's actually done. And you're not going to be able to solve problems at the end of it. What's up, Internet? We are back with this networking tutorial using Riptide. We're making a card game. What I want this tutorial series to be is a step in the shoes of someone who's developing a game, overcoming some problems or redesigning things as we go along, so you can see the process it takes. So it's less of a tutorial and more of like a follow along guide. So in this episode, we are going to be doing some refactoring. Before everything gets too big, we're going to try and move away from singletons as much as possible, because when you test your code and when you want to be able to test something, you don't want to have it rely on having, all this other setup. You want to be able to just run and gun, go ahead and get it going. So what I'm thinking about doing is turning this from a singleton based system into more of like an event-driven system using static classes and holding the data in scriptable objects, and potentially moving on to addressables. So today we're going to be refactoring the singletons into more data containers and event systems as opposed to using the singletons. As well, we might, create the full, connection through to the lobby system and have our game level load or whatever. So let's go in and let's just get this going. And for you guys, I do wear glasses, so Mr. Nerd's going to put them on so I can see. Does it shine in the light, though? All right. So let's see. Basically, right here, we have all of these. We have this singleton here. Now, I know we're using them because I created a util class called singleton. I found a util class called singleton that lets us use it. But I think it's more important here to decouple the code and to reduce dependencies. That is the number one thing, is modularity and dependency reduction when it comes to games. So if you look here, we have our singleton network manager. Well, what I'm proposing is just what happens if we bring this back to our friend here, monobehavior, and fix the issues. I think monobehavior is like that, yeah. Okay. So here we have the on destroy, and we're using base on destroy. Well, let's just get rid of that. We have no base on destroy, no base on awake. We're good here. Yes. And no override. Okay, so we're just doing this, right? And anything we needed through the singleton is going to show up here. And what I'm saying is all our events can be put into something called like a static class. So what I would do when this is done compiling. Okay, here we go. So network manager. So let's create a multiplayer new script. We're going to call this network events. And it's going to be a static class. So we're going to go here. We'll say public static class, network events. Let's just get rid of everything. And let's see what happens. So what is the first event we need? Well, we want to call connect, right? So on connect request, I would say maybe is potentially an event where we take in a string. So let's go here. So we'll say public event. You'll say you can even do a unity action if we want, right? And we're taking in a string, and we'll say connect request. Now, what we can do here is, when you have an event, you do public void on connect request, public static. We need a static, and we need this to be static, right? Because we're doing or if everything inside of here should be static, right? Oh no, everything needs to be static. All right, yeah, because the class is static, everything needs to be static. So public static void on connect request, taking a string, we'll say username or whatever. And what that is going to do is basically invoke this if it's not null. So connect request is null. If it's not null, then invoke it using the username. That easy. And that's what we can call basically anytime we need a call, we call on connect request. And there's that. So basically that's how we're going to go through and see. So we need to subscribe wherever we're connecting here. Basically, we just need to do right here. We go to network events dot on connect request, and we pass in username. And there's that. So we can get rid of this. This should do that. But now we have to subscribe to connect request on our network manager, right? So we could just go here, make a private void subscriptions. And we could even do an unsubscription too. Private void unsubscription, unsubscribe. Let's call this subscribe and unsubscribe. All right. And all that's going to do is we're going to take our network events. So let's say network events dot connect request plus equals. And what are we calling when we connect? We're just calling connect. So let's call connect. And there we go. And let's do the same thing here. Unsubscribe from that. And we've uncoupled our code, right? So now our UI manager doesn't know about our network manager, but they're still passing data through to each other. No problem. Here, we're saving our static username, our local username. We could do that here, or we could do this in a scriptable object, right? So that's kind of like where I'm going about this, is holding our data and things in more malleable places, right? So let's go here, network data SO. And we can even have our network settings there, right? So like, if we really wanted to, we could make it more diverse, and we might end up doing that. But here we go, scriptable object here. What we want is, well, let's call this network settings. SO, there we go. And so that's gonna hold our network settings. We're gonna have a serialized field of our private, or we want, yeah, so let's get here, private, use short, we're doing our port, and we're doing 777 by default or something like that. And we'll do private string for our IP. Is that how you spell string? There we go, and we'll call that 127.0.0.1. And we're going to hold our username, so we're gonna say public static string s local username. And well, do we need it to be static because it's in here? So we can just do public string local username. We're going to do public string. We can say local, or public use short local ID, right? So for our player ID, and we can actually do getters of the port. So public use short port, and get that port that we set. Public string IP is equal to MIP. And that's that. So we have basically our little object here. We just need to do, the classic script. We can create an asset menu for this, so we can create one. So the menu name is equal to network, or say multiplayer network settings. I think that's good. And there's our first scriptable object of the project here. So what I like to do is, we could do this, or we can just, we have too many errors. Let's finish one thing at a time. So we have the client. So we need a message sender too, right? So here we go, network events. It won't update unless we do these, fix these. So I should have fixed those first. So here's our first event is a connect request. Let's do a public static event. We can do a Unity action again, and just make sure that we're taking the same things. We can just look at what we're doing. So let's go back here. Basically, we just need to send, and we need to take in a message, right? That easy. So let's go here. We'll do take in a message from Riptide. We'll say send message. There we go. And what we can do here is we can do the same thing. This is just separating it out, so we don't have to call the invoke thing and check it outside of here. We can just check it in here. So we'll say on send message, and basically just take in a message, and there we go. We can just say on send message. We could even call this send message. And this is going to say, and we could say send message, right, if we wanted to, which is event. I guess we could call it on. It's fine. On send message. We're going to invoke the send message event and basically call everything else around there. So there's that. So now we just go back to player, and here we say network events dot on send message. There's that. And on the network manager, we're going to subscribe to the onSend message, right? So let's do network events dot send message plus equals, and what was it? We can just make it happen. So we'll say onSend message. Here, we can make the unsubscribe here, and let's send the message here. Generate method onSend message. We'll put this here. We'll change this to message, and all we have to do is basically, send the message. So it's client.send message, right? That easy. But now our player doesn't need to access our network manager directly. They just call this event, throw it, and send it to where we need to go. Let's make sure we do subscribe when it's time to subscribe. So subscribe to all our events there, and unsubscribe on destroy. We can just do that here. And we're just kind of decoupling our code, making sure that we don't need to access other things. Like right here, we're going to get rid of that in our player manager. But this is basically the way we're going through, is getting rid of singletons as much as possible. Obviously they're not awful, but I think it's more important to keep everything in the code, separate from each other, right? So let's go through the next one here. Basically just fixing these errors for network manager. So here we go, network manager. We're just getting the player from our client ID, right? So how can we get this player? Well, that's exactly why we save this network data scriptable object, right? So what we can do is we can save our local player in this network scriptable object. Where are we? So basically we can say on client connected, or on connect, let's see, connect, connected on client connected. Yep, so what we can do here is save our network data scriptable object as a thing here. So we'll say, we'll go we'll say serialized field, private network data SO. Oh, we didn't call it that anymore, right? What is it? Network settings SO. So let's rename it there as well. So go to our scripts. There we go. Oh, called the wrong thing. Call it unsubscribe here. No. Save that. Call this network settings SO. You see a man fumbling with his hands here. That's me. All right, so we got our network settings SO. It's our scriptable object. We just attach that here, and we call that, net settings or whatever. There we go. There's that. This can be public, but I think honestly, we could get away with making it private if we wanted to. I'm just making this a get private set. We have this already in our net settings now, so we don't need that. We don't need this there. Wherever we save this username, here we go, on connect. Basically what we want is to save it as our net settings, right? So we'll say m net settings is equal to m net settings dot local username is equal to this. That way it's not static anymore. And actually here our IP, we just do at m net settings dot IP and net settings dot port. There's that separate, and now we can spawn initial player. If we want to do that, we wouldn't really need to do that here. What we'd throw is, we have this event here, right? So we can go create another event. And we say connect request, and then public static event unity action. And what are we going to pass through this? We could pass the player ID. We could pass the username and ID if we really wanted to do that. I think that's a good. So we'll say ushort and string. We're going to pass the username and ID, and we'll say connection successful. Connect success. I think that's good. And that's just our little event. We can call the public static void on connect success. Same thing. So we'll do a ushort ID string username. Just pass in anything we need here. We'll say connect success. Invoke, basically we're just invoking this void or this method here. And let's go to our network manager. And here right now, instead of doing this, we go call our network events dot on connect request, pass in our e client pass in our client.id and our username, which was mnetsettings.username. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, on connect request. We have on connect success. There we go. So this was a successful connection. Now we can subscribe to this event on our player manager.instance when we spawn the initial player. Also here, I'm going to set the ID. So we'll say actually here I'm going to set the ID. So on client connected, we can even set the ID in here in our net settings. So local ID is equal to ID. Papa Booey is equal to client.id. There's that. And our local username is actually, we want that to be equal to just the username. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. Guest. You could set it to guest if we want, I guess. All right, so there we go. We have our local ID, our client connected. And now we will go to our player manager and see where we have an issue here. So, okay. Instead of doing our network manager instance, which we don't have, we are just going to say, we're basically going to get our network settings, right? So here we just get our scriptable object, call this serialized field, private network settings. And we'll call this mnet settings. That's good. And here we'll just say net settings dot local ID. There's that. That's how we get our local player. Blah, blah, blah. But I want it to be static. But here we go. Look at that magic. There we go. Get player, local ID. So we're returning our local player. That's good. Public static bool is local player. So if ID, we just do that. If ID is equal to local player ID, then we're good to go. We don't really need that. I feel like if we're getting the local player, he should have a bool on him that says he's local player, so that's fine. Use short ID, we're doing network manager instance client ID. Really, we don't need that. We just do, here we can just set this. So we're doing spawn initial player, we're passing in the username. But we are actually passing in the username and the ID, right, when we do the event. So let's just subscribe to the event and see what happens. So here, we'll create another thing. We'll say private void subscribe. Also subscribe if you want. Private void unsubscribe. There we go. And so basically here we're just going to say network events dot connect success. We're going to subscribe to that. We'll say spawn initial player, which is good. There we go. And what we need to here is just to change this so it takes in a ushort ID and a string username. There we go. Let's go here. Minus equals there, and on awake we can subscribe if we want. And on destroy we can unsubscribe. So let's just do that. Private void on destroy unsubscribe. There. Let's turn this from a singleton and see what happens. See what we break at the same time. So let's go mono behavior. This is the fun of refactoring code. You get to see everything break and come back to life. So we don't need to save our ID anymore because we're passing it in. Everything here should be good. We're initializing our player. And we'll say initialize local player. And where are we using that? Here. So we're doing private static void initialize local player. We're getting our local player, which was static at some point. Okay. But now that it's not static, we can't do that. So basically, as soon as we get the handshake back that we approved the login, we're changing it to local. So we have our static dictionary. We can say s local player. S local player, or s players is equal to, all right, we'll do this here. Player local is equal to s players, and we will get the value of our bababooey. We want our, see the way this event system works is, or this message system works, it's all static. So you have to figure out a way to do static things while not have it be like overly static, right? We just want our ID, right? So either we could pass our ID in the message, which we don't really need because we have our local ID. Let's see. Oh, well, we could, let's see. So here we could just save our local ID here as a status. So we'll say, if we're using this spawn initial player, yeah, so we can say public static ushort local ID is that. There we go. And now we say s local ID. This doesn't even need to be public. This is private s local ID. There we go. That's our local player. And so now we just say local, local, local. Now here we can actually save our local ID. So s local ID is equal to ID. And that way we know we've initialized it. So here we could set it as -1 and it won't let us do that because it's ushort. We could set it as ushort.max if we wanted to. And if it is ushort.max, that means we have a lot of players, or obviously it's invalid. So but that's how we can check if it's invalid or whatever. Let's see what we got. So we've spawned the initial player. This whole script seems to be, good to go. On that front, let's just get rid of all that. It's very messy in here. Yes, it is. But let's just see what else we got. So we have solved all our errors somehow. What we want to do is create a scriptable object here, our network settings. So call this net settings. And here we have our local username, our local ID, which we can actually hide from inspector if we want. If we don't want to show it up here, but that's kind of the whole point of scriptable objects. We want to be able to see it. I mean, yeah, because it's going to change no matter what we do, right? So like, it's not something we're going to. It's more of a. This is more of a data container kind of thing, right? So I'm going to hide those from the inspector, and if we wanted to see it later, we could see it later. We could just unhide it. So there, it's more of like a static thing going on here, and instead of having everyone tie in to each other, now everything's kind of separate. The singleton UI manager, let's get rid of that and see what we can do here. So where are we accessing that from? UI manager doesn't contain an instance, so we're just getting our local UI from our local scene UI. We're just setting it to this. We don't need to do that. What we want to do, this whole thing here is an event-based thing, but it seems more complicated than the way we can do this. So let's see what we're doing. So we have UI manager, no local UI on the scene. We don't need a local UI because why are we controlling anything through this? Instead, we can move this connect request to our local scene UI, right? So we can do something like this. Let's just do a public void connect since this is the only scene we're going to be connecting on anyway, right? We have our connect there. This is useless at this point. We might even be able to get rid of that. Local UI is this, so we don't need that. Connect input is really our input thing. So let's clean this up here. So we'll say serialized field private TMP input field is equal to username. And then we also have like the password one, right? If we want a password. Okay. And then we have a serialized field private button. That's that. We'll say and login button. And when change instead of local scene UI, we can just call this. Let's find it here in this little section here, and we'll just watch this. We'll just call it login UI. This just I think I over-engineered this to the point where it was kind of stupidly created, and I felt like it at the time. But okay, now we have all this. I think we can just delete this. We don't need to initialize it. I think we're good. We just need to connect. Here we are just going to say input component. Watch this. Our username is equal to musername.text, and then we connect, right? And if we wanted to, we say our password is equal to mPassword.text, and then we'd validate it there. So let's do that. So in network events, let's go here. And the good thing is all we have to do is do on connect request. We'll put a string for the password and pass that in here. And then on the network manager, make sure that we are subscribed to the blah, blah, blah. Here, we'll do connect string password. And if we wanted to check the password, we would check password here. So we'll say to do check send password and validate or whatever. And that would be where we do that. Oh, it's saying our connect request is wrong. Oh, because I did it on the wrong thing. Oh, right here. Just one more place. You got to change this to another string, double string. We're good to go. There, that should be good. Pass in everything we need. And I think we've effectively destroyed one of these managers here. No problem, no need. So we can just delete that out of the scene. Our local scene UI is now called login UI. And what errors do we have now? Let's fix that. On connect request, username, and password. Easy, easy. We're just connecting into like one static thing now. And here's our login UI, so we can just put in, what we want. So let's put in our username, our password, and our connect button here. Okay, we got all that. Completely separate, throwing an event. We don't need any of this. And let's see. I think we're good. Obviously that's our client side. We still need to do the same thing to our server side. It should be a lot easier. So we started it. Only one usage per, okay. So probably connected already at some point. So let's try 777. There we go. We started on 777. And now the good thing is we just change that here. It is 777, so we're good there. We connect. Let's see. And, oh, we forgot to connect the button here, did we? Oh, yeah. We forgot to connect the button to actually call the connect function, right? So, that does this. We just do this here. Our local scene UI, which can now be called login UI. Easier to manage some stuff like that. Call in the connect function, and let's see. And let's just say A. And what's the issue here? Oh, we forgot to see, like when you're using scriptable objects, sometimes you got to plug in the scriptable objects, right? Like that's the one thing you got to do here. So we'll just put it in where we put it in. That should be good there. The good thing about scriptable objects is since it's prefabs, it'll be saved in there and not have like an issue. So we can like override this. When we pull it in, it will be still there. It's not like scene dependent, completely scene independent. Very, very good, persistent thing. Let's do A, connected successfully. We're good to go. And we've successfully, decoupled our code here. Let's do the same thing on the server. And I do have one more thing I want to do. If you guys don't like this, you don't have to do it. This is all for making it easier for me in the future to show you guys how we're going to connect everything. And I just feel like the biggest part of creating an online game, it has to be really easy. Otherwise, it's really easy to get lost in the web. So here, I'm going to do a lot of the same things. Let's just delete this. We can do public server. We can make this get private set. We don't need to access it from anywhere else. Make this mono behavior. Yep, let's get rid of that. Get rid of all this. This could go into like its own enum class, right? Like it's just in the way. And sometimes this is what you do with your code, right? So here we're going to fix that with the scriptable object here. We're going to use the scriptable object to get our local no, this is actually good. I feel like this is using static things correctly. Could we have, because we don't want our player list to persist outside of the game outside of the runtime, right? Like if the server crashes, our player list will be empty anyway because there's not going to be anyone connected. I think this is a good use for having like a player manager instantiated into the game and holding a list. Pretty sure that's a good use for it. I'm just trying to think. Sometimes there's exceptions to the rule. This seems like a good place for this. So this, I'm going to keep this. Here we're going to make a scriptable object the same way. And you know what the easiest way to do this would be is just to delete this singleton and see what errors we throw. So let's delete that, find all our singletons in the magic way here. There we go. Let's go here. Here's our boop. Change this back to mono. Where's our next one? Player manager.awake is now private void awake, no base. Based. Okay, here we go. So network manager does not contain. So we can do an event thing. So let's do network events. Here's that. And you know the easy way to do it is just to go to our client here. Let's copy that. Paste that. We don't need a connect request. We don't need that. All we want right now is send message. If we need more, we'll make more. But we've kind of successfully copied that over. Let's also copy over our network settings SO, because why not? Which means we have to create one. So let's go to our server and create a new script, network settings SO. There we go. So we have the same kind of thing going on here. We don't need a local username because there's local, and we're good. Multiplayer network settings. And then here in our network manager, we will just get our reference to our network settings. Serialized field, private, network settings, SO, and we'll call it mnet settings. And then where we get our port, we'll just say mnet settings.port. And our max players will be mnet settings.max players. All right. Here, this is server side, so we really can keep things, we don't have to do like this weird private thing, but we don't need the IP. We need the port. And let's just call this public port. That's fine. We want the port. And we want the max players. We'll say, 10 or something right now. There's that. And so that should be good. We're good here. I think that's like all the errors. We just need to create our, here's one. Does not contain a definition for instance. Okay, so now we're going to do our network events. And we're going to send a message. And the message will be this. Here we're going to have to do a send message to player, right? So send message to all, right? And then another one called send message to player, where we take in a ushort ID. All right. And we could even call this send if we wanted to, right? So this is send message to all, and then a public static void send again, where we take in a message, and a ushort ID is now send message to player, where we take in the ID, right? So we can just call send, and it'll throw whatever event we need it to throw. Now on our network manager, we're going to have to subscribe to that. So let's do the same thing where we do a private void subscribe, and a private void unsubscribe there. We're going to do network events dot send message to player plus equals send to player, and network events send to all, unsubscribe from both of those. There's that. And, it's a lot of setup all the time, right? We're setting up, we're reformatting, restructuring, but we're getting this good. So we'll do subscribe to these, and on destroy, we'll unsubscribe. That easy. Okay, now we just need to create these methods. So there's our send to player, there's our send to all. Alt enter is what I'm doing to make that. Do a message here, our argument 0, and here's our ID, right? So all we're gonna do is server.send. We're gonna take in our message. Was it send to all, send all, send to all. There we go. And then we're going to do a server.send, and we're going to take in a message and an ID, right? That way we're sending to player, sending to all. And here we can do, where is it? Here we'll just say network events.send. Take in the message, and it knows just to send it to all. Or we can do send to player, send, and we're going to send it to the player. So here we're just sending it to our player, where our ID is actually a big ID. And that should be good there. We should have gotten rid of everything on that front. Okay, we just need to make sure we get our network settings. Let's create multiplayer network settings. Net settings should be good on that front. Pop it in here. Let's override our prefab. All right, there's that. Connected successfully, connected successfully. We're good to go on that front. One final thing, this is going a little long, but I just wanted to get this out of the way, would be probably what I would want to do at this point is to make a separate scene for logging in. I think it's a little much at this point. I think this video has kind of gone on a little long, and we got basic refactoring, under our belt. I think eventually we will move to an additive scene loading method where we keep a persistent scene with all the things that we'd want in every scene, and then unload and load scenes as required when we need them, which is more necessary, especially for an online game where we're going to have a bunch of people loading different things at the same time. I mean, this is not some kind of like open world game, but I think it's really important to see what we're going to end up doing. The glasses, I feel like, are shining on this light. If you guys enjoy this style of like live coding and solving problems, let me know. If you don't enjoy it, let me know. We'll try and figure out, some middle ground where we can get this done, show you how I'm going through the process. Because if I make this some kind of organized, structured thing, it's going to come off as fake. You're going to miss things. You're not going to see the way that it's actually done. And you're not going to be able to solve problems at the end of it. I tried to bring through my thought process on how we're going to solve these issues and why I'm doing it. If it wasn't explained well enough, just let me know in the comments. I'll try to explain it more next time and to you specifically. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for more, and let me know what you want to see in the future.